So today we have Charlotte joining us. I'm sure some of y'all, if you've been around, you've heard about Charlotte, you've heard me talk about her. Charlotte is one of my now good friends. She is a former coaching client that joined me in the early days. She was in my very first group coaching program that I did. And I am so excited to have her here today to talk about where she's at now, because the last time that we did had a conversation together and we shared it publicly, we were talking about her business, where she was at, things she'd been going through. And she actually hadn't had a 5-figure client yet. And since that interview, she has had a lot of 5-figure clients. So I figured it'd be fun to do a check-in with Charlotte, talk about her journey to those 5-figure clients and really what that's looked like for her, so that you can get a better idea of what that looks like from somebody else other than just me. So welcome, Charlotte. Do you want to tell us a little bit about you, what you do in your business, and kind of where you're at and all the good stuff?
Yes. Hello. Thank you for having me here. I think I'm in year 6. There's been quite a few ups and downs. So I started out photographing at my now ex-in-laws' dude ranch. I stumbled, like many of us, on photography as a career quite accidentally. I had always enjoyed photography and love animals, horses and dogs specifically. And I just started photographing very casually there. Then I realized that I wanted to do more artistic stuff. So the portrait sessions became a thing. And I was mostly just serving the guests of the ranch there, which was a great business funnel for me. But then I started wanting to do more, different types of clients. There's a lot of challenges that come with photographing people who it's not their own horse and they're just tourists. And you're lacking in the connections a little bit there sometimes too. I moved into, or out of rather, the ranch space and more into clients with their own horses, which is what most equine photographers do.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. And I also feel like we should explain where you're from, because people are listening. They're going to be like, where is this girl's accent from? What is up with this? So where are you from?
Well, these days it takes a few guesses for people to get it right. I don't know if that's because most Americans don't know accents very well, or if that's because my accent is just really mishmash these days. So I'm from just outside of London, Buckinghamshire specifically. So hi to UK listeners. I moved around a lot. So I worked on cruise ships, I worked on yachts. So I haven't lived in the UK for some time. And I came to the US in 2016. Specifically Georgia.
So you have the Georgia accent now.
Absolutely. I love to tell people that I'm from Alabama and then walk away and watch the miffed look on their face.
That's amazing. If people haven't heard your story, what did your business look like before you met me, before I came into your life? What was that like for you?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I was ever really a shoot and burn model. Some of my volume stuff, which was more or less just snapshots of people riding the horses at the ranch, it was still really an IPS model, even though I was selling digital images because that's what most people wanted. I was offering prints and I was doing a sit down view and order selection process with them. And for that, I was definitely demanding pretty decent prices. And I made a pretty good income from that. I think the last full year that I was doing that, I can't remember what year it was. I want to say it was 2019 that I really was doing that as that formed a large portion of my revenue. I believe that I did 44 days just going down to the barn, photographing the riding activities. And I think that accounted to about $15,000 worth of income. So it wasn't horrible, but it certainly wasn't taking me in the direction I needed to go. So when I met Corinda, I started to make the transition, moving away from that and moving more towards the portrait sessions. And I had already started doing that. I think I want to say my average sale was 1,500 or 1,800 back then. So again, I wasn't going from a $250 volume shoot and burn type model, but I certainly wasn't hitting those numbers that I am now. And so I used the snapshot, I always call it Disneyland photography that I was doing down at the barn, as a vehicle to start getting more portrait clients inside of the confines of the ranch, within the ranch guest pool. And then later on, I moved outside into regular equine clients that most equine photographers would be more familiar with, people getting photographs with their own horse.
Yeah, I love that. So I think when we last did like a conversation like this, your highest sale was around $8,500.
Okay, interesting. I can tell you exactly who that was. I remember that. Yes. Okay.
So I'm sure when that sale happened, you were like, holy crap, this is amazing. How did that feel like, looking back, being a couple years removed from that now? Like, what did you get back to?
That's so funny. And actually, I'm sure if I scroll back far enough in our text messages, I could find that exact screenshot of the invoice with the surprised face emoji over the top of it. Yeah, so that particular client was a barn owner, actually. And the great thing about that particular series, if I could just talk about that for a minute, was that was the third of 3 clients that came from, I believe, one silent auction client. And it's funny how that sale escalated, because the very first client, I believe, was, I think, a fairly small sale for the time. It was like 1,500, 2,000, something like that. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't a great sale. Then I believe they referred, or I think the second client was also a silent auction client, but only bid on the item because their friend had bid on the same item the year before. So it was a referral to a silent auction client. And they spent a little bit more than that. And then I was out showing the products to my clients, which is testimony to always show your products in as much of a public place as possible. And I was showing those to my clients, and the barn owner came out and said, "Oh my goodness, my daughter needs to have this." And that's where that sale came from. In comparison, like looking back at that, I would certainly not be disappointed, but with that kind of sale now. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately with regards to, and I think we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago where I texted you about a sale, and it was like, I don't know, I think it was like $4,000 or $5,000. And I expected to get a bigger sale out of it. And your comment to me was, isn't it funny how time changes things? Because, back then I would have been like, oh my God, look at the sale, girl. I would have been absolutely like blindsided by this $4,000 or $5,000 sale. And now that's pretty normal for me. So yeah, the $8,000 sale, I think prior to that, my highest had been a $5,000 sale. So the $8,000 sale was definitely, a great feeling, and it opened up in my mind, the possibilities. And I think that's true in business in general, is not just with sales, but with possibilities, with your way of thinking. You just start to think bigger. Every barrier that you break through, every problem you solve, you just expand your possibilities. And that's illustrated in my sales for sure.
Yeah. So think back to like however many years ago it was when we met. Charlotte, back then, what if I would have looked at you and been like, one day you might have a client spend $20,000 with you? What would you have said?
Yeah, I would have. I think, given my, I would have definitely thought that it was a stretch for sure. I don't think I was necessarily in the place where I thought it was utter nonsense and it would never happen to me. I think that having seen what you were doing in your business, which was the great thing about us doing the sort of coaching we were doing, was that, and one thing I'll always say about the coaching that I did with you and the time that I did it, you were far enough ahead of me to teach me, but not so far ahead that I felt alienated from that I could never achieve that. And so that was great timing for me, that what I saw you doing was completely achievable. But definitely back then when I was, my average, what my normal sale would have been $2,000-$3,000, I certainly didn't think that I would have clients spending in excess of 20,000, especially not multiple times.
So was there a point in time when you were like, ooh, maybe I could get people to spend that much money? Or did it just happen and then you were like, crap, I did it?
So I'd have to look back at the numbers, but I do believe that the highest sale at the point of achieving what turned out to be a $23,000 sale, at that point, and that was, I believe, in the summer of 2020, I don't know. But anyway, it was less than a year prior. And I believe that the highest sale up until that point was $8,000, the $8,000 sale we just talked about. So I didn't inch towards it. It was very much, holy smokes, this is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot your question.
I think that's like a thing that happens for a lot of people. I think that it just comes out of nowhere, the first one, and they're like, wait, where did this come? How did this happen? Wait, what?
Yes.
Yeah. Shocker thing that just happens. And then you're like, wait, that happened?
Yeah, I definitely didn't expect it. And I've had a few big sales since then that I was expecting. I definitely didn't expect that first massive sale, where it came from, just the timing. Life was very chaotic then when it happened too. So I was really in this space of, I was in survival mode and I was just doing what I could, and I was hustling really hard, and I was definitely working really hard and putting a ton of energy into my business because of personal circumstances at the time. But I definitely didn't see that one coming. Yeah, so it was amazing to to have that kind of sale. And what was incredible is it wasn't even double what I had previously done. It was way more than that. So to have that huge jump just really catapulted me into realizing the possibilities and what my new standards were. And when I say new standards, I don't mean that I expected every client to spend $23,000, but I certainly was going to try. So, it just took me to a new level. Yeah.
It's like, once you know it's a possibility, then it's, could this person do that too? Could this person be the next one? Could this person? Yeah. And you start to, I think like almost having the first one is the hardest, but I actually think the first one's the hardest, but the second one might even be harder in a way, because you don't know, that second one is, oh my gosh, when's it going to happen again? Am I going to be able to do it again? Am I going to be able to do it again? And then you're just like,
yeah,
you get a bit of frustration, like waiting for the next one to come through.
Yeah, I'd say that's true. Like, I think that the first one, there was no anticipation for it because, and like I said, the client source really wasn't what I would have, if I had to put money on, okay, this is where my $23,000 client's going to come from, it wouldn't have been that. So it just goes to show, you never know. But yeah, I think definitely, and it's just the same as I've said with the problem solving, going back to that. And just to shift the context for a minute, and how I've noticed this a lot recently is that you might see screenshots of things that you were tackling a couple of years ago, or you might get in a Facebook group that you've realized that you've grown out of because all the conversations are centered around this preset or this preset or this color or that color. And it's very small problems. And that's not to say that they're not important at the time, but I think that it just shifts the goals much more. It just increases everything. It expands everything. And so it just expands your horizons very quickly when you have that kind of sale, or you have that kind of success in something else. It's not just about the numbers. It could be that you pulled off some amazing session or some volume portrait day or something like that, and you're like, wow, I can do this. And it just really expands your horizons when you get something like that happen to you.
Yeah. So do you think there was any like really big thing or big shift you made in your business that allowed you to finally get those big sales? Or what do you think the difference was?
Yeah, so going from those $2,000-$3,000 averages up to a much higher average, and then hitting those occasional like high 5-figure sales, definitely stemmed from having a uncapped product offering. And what I mean by that is there's two major shifts that I made in my pricing and my product offering. One was that I removed my unlimited album. So that means that my album sales, sometimes a client could spend $6,000 on an album, and that's not even all of their portraits. So that really bumped my album sales up. And then the second thing would be to offer a really high quality wall art option. So specifically what I did was I offered a painted portrait option, which was a framed canvas. It was, at the time, I offered that as what I like to call my Mac Daddy option, my top option, my most luxury option. I think when I introduced it at the time, it was serving more as a price anchor. I didn't have a sample. I didn't see myself selling those canvases to every client. It really was there to give that higher priced option. The next level down from that at the time was a standard wrapped canvas, just from a standard lab. And that was about it. So yeah, I think those are the two major shifts, was uncapping my album and offering a much higher price wall art option.
Do you think that you changed the way you were shooting it all to get those bigger sales? Do you think that you had to flex that muscle a little bit too, or do you think it was all just product based?
No, I definitely think that yes, it did impact the way I was shooting, but what I could really put my finger on was more that it impacted the planning process. And I've made another major shift this year in my messaging and my branding. And at every opportunity I get, I am telling clients, we are doing this to put something on your wall. Mm-hmm. And I think that in this last sort of year to 18 months, I've really combed through my branding, my website messaging a lot, my social media marketing, particularly my client correspondence, my emails, my phone calls with them are way more focused on creating that artwork. I think that previously in my planning calls, we spent a lot of time talking about outfits and hair and makeup and things like that. And we did talk about the products, but it didn't take front and center of my planning call with my clients. So I've really turned that on its head. And almost now my marketing is to the point where it's, if you're not going to put something on your wall, then I'm probably not the photographer for you. And that's ballsy sometimes. And you do sometimes wonder whether you're turning work away, but that's where I got to.
Out of curiosity, what's the most expensive thing on your price list right now?
18,000, but that's going up to about 20,000 soon, which is a gigantic piece. It's certainly not going to be something that every client looks at. Another thing that I say that I have done, which again is just a result of expanding my horizons and realizing the possibilities, is I'm not afraid to throw a 70 or a 60-inch canvas on a wall mock-up and show that to the client first. Whereas previously, I might have been a little bit more conservative about that. I'm certainly not showing them things that are oversized for their wall. I'm not showing them things that are not going to fit or that are going to look ridiculously big. But I'm definitely not as shy with that, because if my client tells me, let's go down a size, I'm still happy with what I'm putting on the wall. I'm still happy with that sale. On the other side of that is I'm also not afraid to tell a client when something's ridiculously small for their wall. And that very rarely happens these days. Seldom do I get a client that is trying to put a 16 by 20 on a huge room with high ceilings. Very rarely, because at that point, they get it. I've educated them enough to that point where they know that's not the goal. So,
yeah. So also something fun to point out is, or I guess to ask you, I know the answer to this question. Do you have packages?
No.
Why don't you have packages?
Okay, so actually, I do think the $8,000 sale was a package. And it was, and interestingly, it was the one and only time. And I immediately took my packages off, I believe very shortly after that sale. I don't know if it was because of that. I think the packages, firstly, can cap your sale. They put your clients into a box. But the other thing, the biggest thing for me, is they add a layer of unnecessary complication.
Yeah.
And I think that packages, the word packages itself is a cheap word. But it also, it just takes away from the custom experience of things. It really makes it hard to convey to your client that what we are doing is custom, it's special, it's one of a kind, you are my only focus. And I think that it can really be quite damaging in that sense, because you can do everything possible to give that client that amazing one-on-one custom tailored experience, whatever adjective you want to use to describe that amazing experience that is special to them. And then you undo a lot of that work by offering them a package. But yeah, I don't really recall why I felt the need to offer packages back then. But I know that it was only for a very short time. And I do firmly believe that my client that spent the $8,000 back then would absolutely have spent that, maybe more, if the packages hadn't been there. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was still using packages when you first met me. And I ditched my packages. And as soon as I ditched my packages, it was like, oh, wow, dang, I can't believe I've held onto these packages for so long. They really do limit your sale and definitely put your clients in a box, which is not a great feeling. Because how are you supposed to like design wall art if you're like, this packages comes with a 20 by 30. And so you want the 20 by 30 package. So we have to put a 20 by 30 on the wall, and your client's like, yeah, we do, because it's in the package. And you're like,
yeah, definitely. It really, and I think it makes the selling harder. I definitely don't think it helps. And I think that there is this false belief that packages are like the easy way to sell. And I really don't think that that's true. I think that allowing your client to purchase what they want, but also steering in the direction for what they need and what you know they need is the way forward. And I do think that some people do opt for the package option because they think that it gets them off the hook with the selling.
Yeah. Okay, so I actually don't know the answer to this. I think I do. But do you show your clients a price list anymore?
Absolutely not. No. Yeah, that's just mumbo jumbo, doesn't mean anything to them. And I tell them that too.
When do you think you ditched your price list? I'm curious if you remember when.
Oh, I don't think so. Back when I was doing ranch, a lot of the ranch clients, I was doing in-person IPS because those people were physically at the ranch. I would expedite their order. I would do the IPS appointment with them the following day, usually. I do recall, actually, that's funny. That's brought up a memory. I had this, I think I still have it, this like brown leather folder that I intended to keep my prices in and make it all special and stuff. And I believe that I printed them off on gray card. And very shortly after I printed them off, they had handwritten notes all over them, scribbles crossed out and everything. And I don't think that I ever really truly had a price list. It was in a presentable PDF format that you could have shown to a client had I not scribbled all over it. So I'd say I don't think ever truly was I consistently showing a price list to clients. Yeah, maybe in the very early days. So I'd say if it switched, it was probably around the same time as I met you.
Yeah. So I think it's a really good thing to bring up because a lot of times when I tell people like I don't use a price list, they're like, "What? Are you serious?"
Yeah.
Like on the Hair of the Dog Summit when I was teaching on the summit and I said I don't use a price list, the chat was like blowing up. She just said, she said,
you broke the internet off that day.
Yes. So if you're listening to this and you're like, what are they talking about? No price list. There's a podcast episode called Why Ditch My Price List.
It's like you just said that you eat kittens for breakfast.
Yes. Well, we've talked about the business side of things that shifted. What type of mindset shifts, if any, do you think happened for you to get to that place where you could have those big sales?
We've talked a lot about expanding horizons, and achieving that next level automatically brings you this mindset of, oh, wow, that really is possible. I wonder what's next. And that's something that I always try to ask myself is, okay, we've done that. What's next? And I think that's a bit of an entrepreneur's, what would you call it? A burden in a sense sometimes, is that we're never really satisfied with what we've done. We're always on to the next thing. It's a high achiever's blight. But I think that realizing, for me, there were some personal circumstances change. And I think that realizing that I needed my business to survive. And the thought for me, and maybe this isn't necessarily a healthy thing of where this came from, for me, and it started with fear. It started with my worst nightmare, the thing that would keep me up at night, that would break me out in sweats at 4 o'clock in the morning, would be having to work for someone else. And for me, that fear, it just lit a fire under me that I had to make this work. I had to make this business profitable. And while I was always making decent sales, it wasn't at the point, until that mindset shift happened, it wasn't at the point where I could truly survive on my own with my business as my sole income.
Yeah. So I think this is an important point because I think a lot of times as photographers, we tend to say, this is a hobby. And then, or the people around us, our friends, our family, our significant others, treat it like it's just a hobby. And there's that mentality that comes with it. And then there's also this whole idea of sometimes you're just in a comfortable place and you don't need the income. Like your significant other might pay the bills, or you might not have a ton of expenses. So you're like, I don't really need to make a whole lot of money because I don't have a lot of expenses right now. But if you grow your business from that place, you will always stay in this like, it's just a little extra money, but you'll still be working full time and you'll still be busting your butt and you'll still be like over there going, man, I work a lot for just a little bit, but I don't really need the money. That's okay. And I think that women especially tend to get into that trap of, oh, it's just a little extra. It's nice. I don't really have to support myself, or I don't really need it. And then if the day comes, you're like, oh crap. So if y'all are listening to this and you're like, that's kind of me, I'm in that space where it's just extra. I don't really need it. We don't need it to survive. Our family's okay without it. I really want you to take like a good hard look at that mentality, because if you decided to shift that to say, my business is important, my business can allow us to pay off our mortgage, my business can allow us to save for retirement, my business can do this and this. It's not just extra. It might be extra, but your extra could make a big difference in your life. And I think that the shift in those mentalities from just some extra to like, this is my livelihood, this has to happen, is what sometimes keeps people from really doing what they need to do. And I think that's probably in your position, Charlotte, like you were like, I have to make this happen, so I'm going to go do the things.
Yes, definitely. And I think that whichever situation you're in, whether it's that your spouse makes good money and that you don't really need the income from your business, or whether it's that you just are kind of comfortable or don't have high expenses or whatever, all of that comes from a place of comfort, and nobody grows in comfort. And so there's lots of things that I had to do that made me extremely uncomfortable. Yeah, I won't go into details about those things now. We'll save that for another day. But, you know, there's certainly things where I had to pull up my big girl pants and take a deep breath and just do it. Because I just knew that there was no other option for me. There was another option, that was to work for someone else, which was selling my soul to the devil. That just wasn't an option for me. And I've spoken to lots of people recently, lots of other photographers, and I from both sides of the mindset shift. Some of them are still in that place of comfort. Oh, I don't need to make much money. And others, some people, it runs much deeper than that. Some people, it really is a money mindset issue. It's a block in that they don't feel worthy of making that kind of money or charging that kind of money. And then I've also spoken to people on the other side of it that have said to me, okay, all of a sudden I've got 2 months to make this a viable thing because my husband's lost his job, or we're losing house, or we're having to move, or some major life event happens. And so I think that I always tell people, run your business like your life depends on it, because one day it might. And that's a shocking, not such a happy thing to say to some people, but I do think that some people really need that wake-up call, like I had, to realize that you just don't know what's around the corner. Unfortunately, people are woken up sometimes. Most of the time, these things that wake you up are not happy things. They're not great things. Sometimes they can turn into great opportunities. But I think that usually those things are job losses, deaths, divorce, illness, unexpected expenses through health problems, all these different things that life throws at us. You have to expect them, and your business has to be set up in a way, or making you the money to tackle it. And if that money is just surplus right now, there is always someone that needs that money. If you truly are in a position where you are making so much money, you don't know what to do with it, there is always someone that can use that money. My words of encouragement with that is just stop playing small with it, because the reasons that you're playing small are not what you're telling yourself or not what you're telling other people. There are deeper reasons to that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So I was going to ask you, because people always say this to me, they're like, Corinda, where do we find these clients that are willing to spend all this money? My clients, there is no way in hell they're going to spend that kind of money. Where do you find these people? So what are the magical secrets you've discovered to find these people? Or are there any?
So let's see, I don't think anything's magic. Any of it's magic. I think that you create these clients through your education process. And you know what? If it wasn't so expensive, I would love to do an experiment and to just offer what I would love to do is take the exact same person, have the little Men in Black memory eraser thing, and take them through the process as I do now and have them spend thousands of dollars and then wipe their memory and take them through the exact same process again and just offer them and not offer them what I think that they might want to purchase or maybe offer them packages or just offer them a $300 all-inclusive thing. Just to prove a point that the same person will spend $3,000 or $13,000 with you. It's all in how you prepare them for the sale, how you educate them, and how you sell to them. I'm one of those people. I actually love to be sold to. I walk into a store, and if I am not met with someone that says, hey, how can I help you? I will walk out.
Yeah.
Because people need their hand holding. And I think there's such this sales as being such a dirty word and such a sleazy thing. But the difference between having a client that is going to spend $300 or $30,000 truly is how you serve them and how you sell them. And so they are created, not you don't find them, you create them. Now, of course, I'm not saying that every client can be turned into someone that's going to spend $20,000, $30,000 with you. What I'm saying is you also get better at recognizing where your energy is best spent by picking up on the cues that person is giving you. And primarily that really all boils down to whether they value what you're offering. If you can see that person values what you're offering, truly values what you're offering, then that's a good place to start. And from there, the sky's the limit, really.
Yeah. I think the comment about going into a store and if somebody doesn't try to sell you something, you're not. I 100% agree. There is a boutique that I go to, and I straight up, the girls now know when I walk in there, they know if they bring me clothes to try on and they're like, hey, Corinda, what about this? I will buy pretty much whatever they bring me that fits and looks decent because I hate shopping so much. So I think once upon a time, I actually was like, I just need y'all to bring me clothes. Can y'all I don't want to laugh. I'll glance through the racks, but I'm not going to pull stuff off the rack because I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to be good for me. I don't know if I'm really going to like it when I put it on. But if you bring it to me and tell me it's going to look good, and then if I come out of the dressing room and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so cute. What if you try it like this? Or what if you tuck this in this way? I'm going to buy all the things. And do I enjoy spending money? I actually personally don't love spending my own money. I'm cool spending money in my business, but in my personal life, I don't love spending money. I have money mindset issues, clearly. But when I go shopping and they bring me all these things and I'm like, go to check out and I'm like, ooh, that's $600 worth of clothes. Damn, I did not intend on doing that today. I'm not going to swipe my credit card if I don't want to spend the money. If I didn't want to spend the money, I'd put the stuff back, or I'd look at the price tags before I went to the checkout and try and figure out how much and what I needed to put back to save money. So if you're telling your client, like, yeah, you need this. Yeah, you should get this. Yeah, this looks really good. Yeah, this fits your space. And by the way, here's how much these things are. And they're like, cool, sounds good. then what the heck would you not swipe their credit card? Why are we worrying all too often as photographers about what our clients are doing with their credit cards? Like, if they want to swipe the credit card, they want to go take out a loan or a second mortgage on their house to pay to invest $30,000 in photos. Sure, they can do it. Their money, not mine. I don't care. And I think there was a podcast episode of recently, and somebody posted in the Facebook group, and they were like, "Ooh, that thing you said about we shouldn't care about our clients' pocketbooks and what they're doing with them, that really stung because I used to care. I am caring about my clients' pocketbooks and how they're spending their money." So I think that is really important to think about. And if, you're there saying, yeah, you should do this. Yeah, this looks great. Yeah, this fits your space. And your clients are like, yes, let's do it. Then why not? Why not keep adding up the bill? Why not keep adding on more wall art? So I think that is a really important perspective to keep in mind. Charlotte's been to that store with me. She knows. They know to just bring me clothes now.
I love that store. And actually, you just brought up a memory for me that I hadn't even equated to business. I think the most money I'd ever spent, the biggest shopping spree I'd ever been on, I think, was with my best friend when I was, I don't know, like, I guess we were in our early 20s. And the reason I would never have bought all of those pieces of clothing had it not been for her. And she just literally marched me around the store. Was like, oh, this would suit you. This would suit you. This would suit you. This would suit you. And she was like acting like this personal shopper. And that's the most amount of money I've ever spent on clothes, because it was probably the biggest shopping spree I'd ever done, because she did that for me. She showed me what would look good on me. And she took me through a very similar process, actually. It's funny. I remember this. She taught me how to shop, which is crazy, but I wasn't a big shopper. And so she said to me, yeah, she's like, this hook is yes, this hook's no, this hook's maybe. And now a lot of the clothing stores do actually have those hooks in there. But back then, this was just there were 3 hooks or 4 hooks in the dressing room. And she said, yeah, put your no's there, put your yeses there, put your maybes there. And I just find it funny how now I'm doing that with my own clients with their images. So that's funny. That's just brought up a memory for me that I'd forgotten about.
That is really funny. I love it. I think it's so important. Like, we remember, like, our clients are excited to spend all their money on photos. If they weren't, they wouldn't do it. And part of what we do as photographers is normalize the idea that it is cool and that people spend tens of thousands of dollars on photos all the time. And they do. It's normal. And when we tell our clients that, like, hey, you can come work with me and you're probably going to spend $5,000 or $6,000, but you also might want to spend $20,000 or $30,000. And if you do, don't get mad at me because I told you might want to do that. And then when they get to their reveal and they you're adding it up and it's like $20,000 and they're like, oh, I'm that person that I laughed about and said, no, I won't ever do that. But they're like, I have to do it. I can't not get these. I love them. They're amazing. This canvas is gorgeous. How can I walk away without it? So I think that is a really cool feeling too. So I have one final question for you.
Sure.
Since you all are from England, what are your thoughts on using this same system in other countries, other locations outside of the US? Because I talk to photographers in other countries all the time, and they're like, people don't hang up photos of themselves in their homes where I live, or people don't spend money on photos where I live. So what would you say to those people?
I would say that is an extreme opinion. I would say that yes, and this is being very realistic here, there are cultural differences between Americans and Europeans, for example. There are. You may have to work a little harder to educate those clients, create those clients. I don't like to use the word find those clients, but I guess initially you are finding, as far as marketing goes, you're finding where they're hanging out, where to source those clients from. They do exist. There are plenty of successful photographers that are making these kind of sales, equine and pets and otherwise, family photographers, all different genres that are making these kind of sales with these methods and with this business model. I would say that's a very extreme opinion. And I think that you need to ask yourself why you have that opinion. It certainly there's certainly an element of truth to it, but I wouldn't go as far to say as it's not doable. It absolutely is. Before Corinda came into my world, I was doing some education, just online education with a UK-based equine photographer, and I know for a fact that person is making the same kind of money in the UK.
Yeah. I think that's really important to remember, is that it is possible anywhere. It's just that you have to work a little bit harder to educate people, because they're not aware that it's a thing that people spend money on. And here in the US, I think there's a lot of photographers now that are like, yeah, people spend $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 or more with me. It's normal. So people are starting to realize that. But I think you just have to do a little bit more work on your own to get them there.
I guess my hope for the industry would be, back when I was a kid, like Halloween wasn't really a thing in the UK. Occasionally you get a couple of kids around, but it wasn't like people decorating their homes with like 20-foot Grim Reapers and things like that. And the culture of that has slowly shifted over to the US, the UK, sorry, as has the importance around home decor and seasonal home decor. And when I was a kid, it certainly wasn't like, yes, you decorate your home for Christmas, but that was about it. There wasn't any other type of seasonal decor available. So I think that definitely the attitudes towards home decor are definitely, and the effort that people put into how their home looks in Europe is definitely shifting. Now you can go to a department store in the UK and you will definitely see that kind of seasonal sort of decor. So it just shows that cultures are shifting, attitudes are shifting, priorities are shifting. So I think that will definitely pave the way for photographers in Europe to eventually find it a little bit easier to have these kind of successes. But I absolutely believe that it's possible now. It just means that you're having to put your effort into different things sometimes.
And you know what I find really interesting when people tell me that? When we went to Europe, I don't know, 4 years ago, any like place we went and toured, any old home, any castle we went to, they had giant pieces of art, far bigger than any art I've ever seen anywhere I've gone in the US. Like, they had 80-inch canvases on the wall of every like head of the household or every family member or every uncle or whatever they were. Like, giant, huge portraits of people in these homes. So I do actually think, in all reality, like, that used to be a normal thing in high class, high society.
Yes.
Over there. And I don't even think was that big of a thing in the US. I can't think of any place I've ever gone and seen giant canvases that large that literally the entire room is filled with these giant portraits of people. So I like to think about it like that. And that's probably was one of my favorite things when we were over there, is just looking at all the giant pieces of art in these homes. So
yes, yeah, it's definitely something that used to be a thing, especially in the UK. I can't really speak well for the rest of Europe too, but definitely in the UK, especially I visit a lot of stately homes and National Trust homes with my mom when I visit the UK. And yeah, you're right. It's just complete banquet halls filled with canvases, unimaginably huge canvases. Yeah. And paintings and things like that. So I guess it's just something that modern culture in the UK has moved away from. And it's, in a sense, sort of something of the past. But like I said, there's definitely clients out there that will do this. And the reality of it is, you don't need hundreds of clients to say yes to you for these kinds of things. You only need a handful of them.
I would take $5,000, $20,000 clients a year and call it a day. That would be great.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
Yes.
That's the goal.
Right? This has been super interesting to talk through this with you. somebody that I know very well and I talk to often, getting to ask you these questions and hear like your perspective on it on a real serious level, not serious level, I don't know, has been really awesome. And I hope that hearing your story has helped other people say, huh, if Charlotte can do it, maybe I can do it.
Yeah.
If Charlotte can. It was so great having you. I would love to hear after you listen to this episode, I know what y'all's thoughts are about this, what your questions are about Charlotte's experience. Post in our group, send us a DM on Instagram. And if y'all have questions for me and Charlotte or something you want us to dive into deeper, just let us know, because I'm sure I can always twist Charlotte's arm to come back on and do another episode with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Never takes a lot for me to come and chat with Corinda.
And if people want to find you, Charlotte, and look you up and stalk you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so, well, I'm sure the spelling of my last name will be in the show notes, because not even Corinda can spell my last name. So I am Charlotte Detienne Photography on Facebook. Also on Instagram, Charlotte Detienne Photography, no spaces. And my website is charlottedetienne.com. So nice and easy if you can spell my last name.
It's true. Or say your last name. I can say your last name. Awesome. I hope everyone has an amazing week, and I hope this episode leaves you inspired to go out and start looking or creating your first 5-figure clients.